TV personalities and members of the media have been falling all over themselves to remain in the good graces of the anointed one. But why wasn't the same treatment given to former President George W. Bush? Now, during his 8 years in office, he was relentlessly trashed in the press. Take, for example, this statement from L.A. Times columnist Rosa Brooks, who wrote in 2007, quote, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney shouldn't be treated like criminals who deserve punishment. They should be treated like psychotics who need treatment. But it didn't stop there. No, some on the left actually accused George W. Bush of being a war criminal. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this exchange from my appearance on the show, The View. You guys, all you guys on the left, you demonize this president. You once called George Bush a war criminal?
He is. He should be tried at The Hague.
What do you want? You want to give him the death penalty?
No, I said he should be tried.
Life in prison? What a fun day that was. Joining me now for an exclusive first look at his brand new book, How the Left Swift-Boated America, the Liberal Media Conspiracy to Make You Think George W. Bush was the worst president in history. Fox News' own John Gibson. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, Sean. You were on the front lines. That was pretty much constant since about 2004.
It was. You see, I have a very different view. And I'm not saying George Bush wasn't perfect. I had my areas of disagreement.
Yeah.
But on the issue of war and security, I think he was a great wartime president.
I do, too. And what the case I make in the book is that after Kerry lost, they decided that the left decided that saying the war was wrong wasn't enough. Now they had to say we're losing it. And they beat the drum relentlessly that the war was being lost right up to a point where it really was being won. Losing was a winning strategy for the left, and we see the result. Look who's in the White House.
But it gets so bad, the surge has failed, the war is lost. They're killing innocent civilians in cold blood, Murtha said. John Kerry accused our troops of terrorizing women and children. I mean, it got as bad as it can get, especially when these guys are out there fighting every day. And you sort of chronicle all of this.
Well, I went through, I thought an accounting was due. Let's go over what they said and check it out and see whether they were right or wrong while they were condemning Bush, condemning the war, claiming the war was lost, claiming everything was lost. They turned out to be desperately wrong. And, of course,
we won the war, but you don't read that headline.
No, it's a drive-by shooting. They moved on.
Yeah, they moved on. Now it's not important.
And they accomplished the goal they wanted to accomplish. The left wanted someone in who wasn't Bush, and the guy who tapped into it the best was Barack Obama.
All right. I agree. It was a constant effort at demonizing the president. And look at, for example, MoveOn.org. Look at how ugly this got. Here's a guy that has dedicated his life, General Petraeus, to saving his country. General Petraeus or General Betray Us?
This was the dirty little ugly fact about this was no one in the Congress, in the Senate or the House, would dare say these kinds of things about Petraeus. But what they said was, which I've got in the book there, is we're expecting outside groups to do that for us. They were expecting Move On or somebody else to do that for us. They wouldn't say the words because they knew it was darn near treason. But they got somebody else to do it for them, and they were happy it was said.
This recent letter to President Obama from Michael Moore, and he says the following. He says, well, let me be blunt. We love our kids in the armed services, but we bleep hate these generals. These generals have literally, like General Petraeus, dedicated their lives for the safety of their country. Why do you think there wasn't more outrage, and why wasn't there more media coverage in the mainstream media on this?
Because the mainstream media was basically on the side of the left here. They didn't want to cover the obvious. General Petraeus should have been the left's general. This was a guy who thought the war wasn't being prosecuted correctly, came up with the counterinsurgency manual. He would have been the left's guy, but because he was taking orders from George Bush, or agreed to, it made him the devil. And they felt it was open season on Petraeus. Go ahead, he's a target that isn't even moving very fast.
All right, you take on NBC pretty hard in the book. First, I'll run this shot of sound on tape of Joe Scarborough, their so-called NBC's conservative, and then your comments on Keith Olbermann, which were pretty hard-hitting. Let's roll the tape.
It's not just singers and movie stars who are suggesting that George Bush's mental weakness is damaging America's credibility at home and abroad. Ronstadt said this earlier. The Dixie Chicks said they were embarrassed he was from Texas. Well, I'm embarrassed George Bush is from the United States. The president is an idiot. He's enormously incompetent on both the domestic and international scenes. That is no doubt a sentiment that is shared in some of the capitals of our friends and foes alike. So is the president intelligent? And do we need a brilliant president or just somebody who surrounds himself with bright people?
You take on NBC hard.
Yeah, look, the weird thing about what went on between 2004 and 2008 is the three leading voices of the left were a comedian, Jon Stewart, a theater reviewer, Frank Rich, and the sportscaster, Keith Olbermann. And NBC let him run wild. I worked there for a while. I cannot figure out how what he did conforms to the NBC standards
you have
and
a title,
practices manual.
a chapter title, Who Let Him Get Off His Meds? What do you mean
It's
by
clear that look, the guys who ran NBC and MSNBC were founders. They'd had 10 years of failure. This was the first thing that worked, and they said, hey, it's working a little bit, let him go. And they happily ran to the left if he could get them a few numbers, a bit.
And you have stories, personal stories about him.
Well, you know, I worked there during the Clinton-Lewinsky thing, and he had just started a show, and he didn't like that story and didn't want to come in and do the story. And so I was constantly asked to fill in for him. And the story was that he was at home in his bathtub refusing to get out of the tub to come to work. So I began on my radio show, which is here on the Fox Talk Network, calling him Bathtub Boy. And he has made no attempt to try to refute that story.
Oh, very interesting. It's a great book, but it's very informative, well done, well researched. John, always good to see you. Thank you, my friend.
Sean, thanks a lot.
All right, and